When they calculate interest, there is more than one way a credit card company can do it, but most of them use the average daily balance method. And you're going to be, if you're not real familiar with this, you may very well be shocked about how they do this, because they're not just looking at how much you owe at the end and doing simple interest on it. What they do is they calculate how much you owe every single day. And then they add up all of those unpaid balances for every day and then divide it to find out what your average daily balance is. And I will go through this in a little bit more detail in the next couple of slides. If we need to find the average daily balance, they will send a balance to you. A credit card company sends you a balance, and it tells you somewhere on there what your billing date is. It tells you what your previous balance is. And then it has all the details of whether or not your balance is going up and down. So if you've made a payment, then you get a credit. On the other hand, it's a charge that we've got on here. So if you need to find the average daily balance, what we're going to have to do is add some columns to the information that they actually give you on your credit card statement. Looking here, the very first thing I'm going to do is say that my original unpaid balance, according to them, on May 1, so I'm starting here where it said May 1. On May 1, my unpaid balance is $13.50 and no cents. When I make a credit, that amount goes down $250. So $13.50 minus $250 brings me down to $1,100. Then I charge $375. So we need to add $375 to our unpaid balance. So now we're at $14.75. Then we have another charge. So I've got to take that $14.75 and add $57.50. So now my unpaid balance has gone up to $1532.50. Then I make another charge of $65.30, which brings my unpaid balance up to $1597.80. Okay, the next thing you do is you look at how many days were these unpaid balances, how long did they last? So how many days of the month of May did we owe $13.50? Well, you can do some subtraction. If it changed on the 8th, 8 minus 1 is 7. And I'm just going to do this down. 10 minus 8 is 2. 20 minus 10. 28 minus 20. This seems a little bit odd, but on your last one, you can't just subtract. But at the end here, since it didn't change on the 31st, I have to go the 28th through the 31st. So 28, 29, 30, 31, that's 4 days that I kept that balance. So now this total number of days here, this adds up to all 31 days of May. That's how I know I've got those accounted for correctly. So you have to take your unpaid balance times your number of days. So again, we're going to bring a calculator. Unpaid balance times the number of days. This is going to be as long as things at once. I'm going to type these in and enlarge this part so you can see it again. So I have 1350 times 7. On the next one, I have 1100. I probably need to calculate that one times 2. 1475 times 10. 159250 times 8. And let's see if we get one last one here. 1597.80 times 4. Okay, so actually, also a little bit on that. Let me see if I can make that bigger for you now. Maybe you can see that somewhat. I calculate small. Okay, then there we go. Okay, so let's find out some of these things. And I'm just going to, you can see these numbers over here. I'm going to have to take this off screen because it's going to disappear. Right? I'm going to copy these numbers into this column. So the first one is 94.50. Then we have 2,700. Then 14,750. This is what we're showing $14,000, which is just how we calculate the average. 12,260. And then 6,391 and 20 cents. Okay, so now we know the unpaid balance, and we've done that times the number of days we had that balance. What we're going to do next is actually add that up, because if you look here, when we calculate our average daily balance, you have to add all of the unpaid balances and then divide it by the number of days in the billing period. So first of all, I just want to add those unpaid balances. So now we can kind of see them both. So I've got $94.50 plus $2,200 plus $14.75 plus $12,260 plus $63.91.20. So I'm adding all of those, and I get $45,051.20. So now to do the actual average daily balance, it is that $45,051.20 divided by the 31 days in the month, and then we will have to round this to the nearest penny. So I can take that answer divided by 31, and my average daily balance is $1453.26. Why do we need that average daily balance? Most credit card companies will actually calculate your interest based on your average daily balance. So they're going to apply an interest fee based upon that amount. So when they decide, depending on what your credit card company's interest rate is, it's this amount that they're going to multiply times that interest rate to figure out what your interest charge is going to be. This one then tells us a credit card issuer calculates interest using that average daily balance method. The monthly interest rate is 2% of the average daily balance. Now here's our billing period, so we're going to do it again. And I'm going to pick up a little bit of speed along the way here because you could back it up and watch it again if you needed to, but it's real repetitive, and I use my calculator a lot to do this. So first of all, we start on our billing date with an unpaid balance. $3,800, it says so on the statement. Then I pay off $800, I now owe $3,000. I charge $40. I charge another $160. And then I charge another $200. Now I've got to calculate the number of days I kept each one of these. So 4, I'm doing subtraction, 10, but on that last one I'll have to add another day to it. 8, and then the 27th, 28th, 29th, and 30th is actually 4 days. We've got that extra day in here. So now I'm going to add those up and make sure it adds up to all 30 of my days. Let me see, 3 times 4 is 12, plus 8 would be 20, plus another 10 would be 30. So that's good. Got all the dates taken care of. So now we're going to do some calculator work. All right, I'm going to make it a little smaller, but I'll try to keep it as large as possible there. All right, so I have 3,800 times 4, and that's 15,200. Now I know that 3,000 times 4 is 12,000. 3040 times 10 just adds another 0 to the end, so that's going to be 30,400. And then 3,200 times 8, I'm not quite sure, so 3,200 times 8, 25,600. And then 3,400 times 4, 13,600. So now I want to add all of those up to get the total. We're going to use this. This says A down here at the bottom. The next slide is about the same sort of setup. It's just the rest of the sort of problems they may ask you on your homework. So I've got to get my calculator now, and I need to add all these up. So I'm going to hit clear. I'm just going to start with clean slate. I've got 15,200 plus 12,000 plus 30,400, 25,600, 13,600. So 96,800. And when I calculate this down here, then I have 96,800 divided by 30, because there's 30 days in the month they're dealing with, September. So my average daily balance is $32.26.67. Now I may need to come back and look at this page because this problem continues. I couldn't put the chart on there and get it all on the same page. So the next part of this problem says find the interest to be paid on the next billing date. Well, interest is calculated on your average daily balance. It does say it's 2%, so it'll be 2% of the average daily balance. So that is $32.26.67. then it's going to be times the percentage, 2%, so not 20%, so I need another 0 in there. So bring back up my calculator, 32, 26, 67 times 0.02 for 2%. So they're going to charge me $64.53 interest, $64.53. So what will be the balance due on October 1? Well, I need to add the $64.53 to my closing balance on September 30. So on September 30, I owed them $3,400. That's the last charge I made. My unpaid balance was $3,400. So I need to take $3,400 plus the $64.53. And when they send me my new bill, they're going to tell me that I owe them $3,464.53. Now, how much will I have to pay them? Well, the credit card terms, they don't write your terms on every single bill. They give you that when you very first open the credit card. It's a $10 minimum payment if the balance is less than $360. Well, I certainly don't have that, so that's not going to apply to me. Otherwise, the minimum monthly payment is 1/36 of the balance due. That's so that if you didn't keep charging and just kept making payments, you'd eventually get this thing paid off, but it would take years. So since we owe the higher amount, we're going to have to do 1/36 of the balance due. So we're going to have to take 34, 64, 53, and we will multiply that times 1/36, which is of course the same thing. It's dividing it by 36, but since they wrote the 1/36 here. 34, 64, 53 times 1/36 to the nearest penny, $96.24. 96.24. Again, what we've done is found our average daily balance, calculated the interest, put that charge back on so we have a new outstanding balance, and then found out what the minimum payment would be. And those are information pieces generally your credit card company is doing, but it's important to understand how you're getting these charges and what they're doing, which really means, just as a practical application, you know, anytime you can make a payment on a credit card and it brings down that day's closing balance, then it brings down that overall daily average. So that would be a good thing. Credit card debt ends up carrying a lot of interest rates. The charges can be really high. What if you want to just get out of debt? What happens if you decide to pay off the card? If you're going to work off to pay off your credit card and you're not going to make any more charges, you're like, I'm done charging, I just need to get out of this debt. We calculate that exactly the same way we do the other payments. So this is the same formula you've seen somewhere else. So you just say, well, okay, I owe this $4,800. I don't want that to keep going up. I've got to get this paid off. You do need to decide ahead of time, if you're going to calculate a payment, how many years you're trying to get this done in. You know, if you can't come up with $4,800 this year, I mean, that's real. So you just have to figure out, well, I'm going to get myself out of debt in 5 years or whatever it is. But we're going to do that same sort of a formula. So this is then our P, this is R, this is our T, and N is going to be 12 because we're going to make 12 payments a year. Just like we did on the house, we're going to bring this back up, finish up this problem, and this, I think, is our last example. So you're almost done. First of all, I have a fraction. On the top of that fraction, I have P times R over N. So the P was 4,800. The interest rate was 12%. Number of payments per year is 12. And it's over parentheses 1 minus parentheses. I'm doing that 1 plus R over N. So 1 plus the interest rate again, number of payments again, raised to the negative. I'm going to hit the correct key this time, and that's N times T. And this time I'm choosing 5 years. So you might can play with that number if you knew this formula. And say, well, what if I can do it in 5 years? Well, how much would the payments be if I had to do it over, 10 years? What if I tried to do it in 3? And you can see different payments. So if you're going to pay this out over 5 years, it'd be $106.77 per month. 106.77. Now that is the payment. That's the first question that it asked. How much total interest will you pay? Well, let's go back because you got to kind of calculate that out. If we're going to do this is the same way we did with the house, though. We would take our payments, 106.77, and say, I'm going to make 12 payments a year for 5 years. So I'm going to make a total payment back of $6,406.20. minus my original amount that I owed. So my interest would be $1,606.20. Just again, so that you can see what I meant about playing with it. I'm going to go back up and I'm going to copy that so I don't have to retype it. If you didn't know your calculator would do that, I'm just hitting the up key. Once I get that selected, I'm going to hit enter. And then if my interest rate didn't change, the balance doesn't change, I could play right here with the number of years and say, well, what if I want to pay it off in 3 years? 3 years, it changes that payment to $159. So really another 50 bucks. What if I want to get this paid off in 2 years? You just go back and you change that 3 and make it a 2. If you're going to pay it off in 2 years, you need to do $225 a month. So you can play with that formula and how long it's going to take you to calculate, and then you can see how long it would take you to get out of debt. Credit cards, our last slide here, not a problem, but you will have some homework about this. Credit cards have both advantages and disadvantages. What are some of those? You could probably just brainstorm and recognize some of those, but advantages. Well, you're able to get the product right now, even if you don't have the money right now. If you pay the balance due at the end of the billing period, you don't even have to pay interest, and you still have gotten to use the product. You don't have to carry around big amounts of cash. It's a lot faster, more convenient to use cards, whether credit or debit. It's faster to use cards than it is to write a check. A lot of people don't even hardly write checks at all anymore. Credit cards do have like a consumer protection thing, so if there's a fraudulent charge, generally you don't have to pay for it. They're pretty good for emergencies. You can have statements which let you kind of then keep track of spending. If you want to review your spending each month and say, well, how much did I eat out at a restaurant? How much did I charge at Walmart? You can go back and look at those things. Sometimes they have some perks that go along with them, maybe bonus miles or cash back or something like that. But on the flip side of that, the other side of our thing, there can be very high interest rates on unpaid balances. Even 10 years ago, interest rates were as high as 30% on credit cards. It's very common for them to be in the 20-something percent, okay, 25% or whatever. So very high interest rates. And there is no cap on how high they can raise those interest rates. So right now there's no restrictions on that. And they don't have to keep the rate that they started with. They can just send you a notice in the mail and says, hey, the interest rates are going up. They can also charge you some extra fees, like if you make a late payment, there's going to be big fees, or there could be an annual fee for having the credit card. And it's really easy to swipe a card and spend more than you can really afford to spend. The other thing is those minimum payments. If you only make the minimum payment, and a lot of people do that, almost all of that goes to interest charges. So you have to be really careful. So there's pros and there's cons, and that's just some of them. But let me just mention then that you've got to kind of keep those in your mind, because you're going to have some multiple choice problems that ask you some of those things as well. But that finishes up our lesson for today. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give me a big thumbs up and hit like and subscribe below. But wait, this wasn't that kind of video. Okay. All right. Well, do your homework. Send me a note if you have a question.